Hello everyone, Stephen Marchessault here from VETRO FiberMap. Glad to be with you all again for our 7th user enablement series. This has been a very useful tool so far for communicating feature sets, methodology, and best practices. We thank you for joining us again today to talk about our analysis with Polygons feature set. Today's presentation will not be as lengthy as the others, but will be just as useful for understanding this very important new tool that we've released, Analysis with Polygons. Before we get into that, some webinar housekeeping items. Feel free to use the Q&A functionality of the Zoom webinar software to submit questions. We have some VETRO panelists standing by to answer these questions for you. If you don't receive a reply straight away, we may set your question aside until the end as a talking point. Now, today's webinar will be recorded. All attendees will receive an email later today with a link to view or download the recording. So a quick review of the last 6 webinars so far. We've gone over some really important stuff. Highly recommend checking in with the draw, validate, and build, circuits, reports, data management, equipment and materials, project plan and users, all very important key understandings in your use of VETRO FiberMap in planning and designing your fiber optic network. So jumping right into the content for today, we're going to be talking about analysis with polygons, or AWP. So the primary function of this feature set is to allow users to quickly and easily summarize information by a single polygon or group of polygons. Using polygons that have been loaded or polygons that are created on the fly, users can summarize important information on specific target layers. This will be a very important tool for organizations that need to quickly report the number of assets or get a breakdown of estimated costs to serve specific areas. We have come to understand that one of the key business drivers when thinking about future sales targets and network expansion is proximity to the existing network, to areas where the provider plans to build or already has assets, and the use of the network map is key in bridging that gap. So the macro costing tools that are contained within the Analysis with Polygons menu allow an organization to evaluate expected costs and revenue scenarios with complete geographic control for high-level ROI modeling. And over time, as we develop this feature set, we will give users more control over the target layers that are summarized and the ability to incorporate more statistics. So our objective here is to break down the barriers between the teams in an organization, especially between engineering and sales and marketing teams, and establish a single source of truth to aggregate the demand and planning strategies and leverage GIS data in an easy-to-use interface. So there will be a call to action at the end of the presentation after you've had a chance to see the potential use cases of our existing tools, simply asking what else you would like to see included here. I should point out that we do have a demand aggregation tool called Z Manager that we are very excited about and already have many customers signed on for its use. We will be covering this product in more detail in a future session. So for today, the Analysis with Polygons tool really hones in on the macro costing and planning efforts. So I'll also reiterate this point throughout the presentation, but please be sure to reach out to our sales or support teams if you have any questions or you would like to discuss anything mentioned in today's presentation. So going right into some of the details of what we have here in this new menu. One of the most prominent features of AWP is the ability to view details for a single polygon. So you can use the Polygon or Lasso tool to quickly draw a polygon to define the scope of the analysis. And then once you have that established, you can do an analysis of the macro costing and funding overlays and counts of network features that exist within the polygon. The other key feature is the ability to view details for polygons across the entire network. So using the layer summary data panel, you can display and export summary counts of the network points and fiber cables contained within a zone or neighborhood. And it's organized around these layer types like zones, neighborhoods, or any overlays that you might manually create. So backing up a little bit, we had some existing tools that we retained and we absorbed into this new menu. So just to cover what some of those key changes were, the cost and revenue settings that used to be in the dashboard are now within the analysis settings, and they're accessible directly from the analysis menu, so much closer to where you're viewing these calculations and outputs on the macro costing. And so these can actually be adjusted on the fly, and you'll see those calculations update real time. I'll show you that in the demo coming up later. Other changes, we retained the Lasso, Quick Plan, and Polygon tools. but these are now joined into one toolbar within the analysis menu, which we'll see as well. So that's this little bit of icons at the top of that graphic there. And we'll talk about how we use those icons. Then the macro costing export feature, which was previously contained within the zone details. These are now contained, this tool is now contained within analysis with polygons. So we've kept all of those things and we've just brought them together in one convenient location for you. So user permissions, excuse me, are now streamlined to help delineate the zone editing needs of your sales, marketing, and network engineer users. So this theme has come up a lot of these different user types within an organization. And so by creating more granularity around the user roles and the editing of zones and how to save them in plans versus global, we've helped to delineate some of these user types. So some important things to note that the polygons from all of the plans that are visible to the current user is what will be displayed in analysis with polygons. If you want to create or edit a polygon, you can enable editing for a plan, just like with our standard network features. Polygons can be created and saved in the global layer by any user that has view permissions. The user editing permissions for zones is now controlled at the plan level is the main takeaway here. And a user that might be read-only, say a sales user or a marketing user, that doesn't necessarily need to do any zone engineering in the network, can still create these global layers to create reference data for the marketing needs that we'll be talking about in a moment here. So getting into that a little bit more, how we create view-only users and view-edit users. So view-only users can create polygons within the analysis with polygons menu, and these can be saved to the global layer. And then any view or edit user can work within the analysis with polygons menu, or they can also create polygons directly from the main toolbar along with points and lines. So the two main tools that you use to create polygons, the first is the Lasso Tool. This was a very popular tool that gives a quick kind of a cursory look at an area, allows you to do some free-form drawing. And the key here is that these are not able to be saved as polygons, so it's just kind of instantaneous look at data. And so the way to draw with that is you click and you drag to produce the shape, and then you release. And then with the Polygon tool, these can be saved, and they can again be saved in the global layer and a plan layer. And the way that these are drawn is you click anywhere to originate, you click to add any of your corners of your polygon, and then you double click to finalize. So getting more into some of the details of the two key features of the single polygon analysis and the analysis across the entire network, what we see in this menu are some really key features and outputs that I wanted to talk a little bit about the details of, and then we'll get into it even more in the demo. But what we see is we have estimated annual revenue, cost, payback period, projected customers, our route length. So there's a gear icon there that we can open, and this will allow us to manually set expected average take rate, expected average income from business versus premise units, and the average cost to connect, cost per road length. So then all of this is the data that's used for the calculations that we see here in this analysis calculation. We'll also see customer points. So all of the data in the customer points category in the cost request category requires additional purchase of data and services from VETRO to load the data into your instance. This is not available by default. So again, please reach out to our sales team if you are interested in learning more about these options. And when we are looking at the customer points, we see business points and premise points. So business points are third-party source data, records of businesses. The premise points typically come from tax assessor records. They might be sourced from municipalities or sometimes even 911 records, whatever is available. And these contain assessment data, owner name, address, property type. And then we'll see a breakdown of the residential units between MDU versus single family. And then we'll also see counts on our network points and our fiber cables that are contained within that polygon for fiber network that we've designed in VETRO. So this is a key feature that users ask for. So we'll talk more about that. And then the last category that we see is CapEx, OpEx. So this data comes from our partner, CostQuest Associates. And this is a blend of sources. So the CapEx model that they've developed is the same modeling that's used for FCC estimates for program auctions. And it includes some really in-depth information about these block groups. Includes demographic data, infrastructure data, telecom data, estimates of businesses and buildings, average income levels, education levels in an area. Some very in-depth information. So these polygons will intersect with these block groups and produce an output here. And we'll get into what that looks like as well. So getting on to the analysis summary. So the first thing that you need to do here is to select your polygon categories, say zones. And from here, we'll see counts of the customer points, network points, and the total lengths of fiber cables. And so this is all available to be exported to CSV. And an important thing to note here is that what you're viewing in this summary directly reflects what you have enabled for viewing by that user in terms of enabled layers and enabled plans. So that gives you another level of control over the user permissions, and then it's important that that user enables those things for themselves in order to see them presented here. And so then the last tool that we'll talk about today is the Quick Plan tool. This is a very quick and easy tool to use, and it produces some pretty interesting output. So if your sales or marketing team is unable to determine if a lead is within the reach of the network, they might need to go to a network engineer. It might take a lot of time. So this tool enables them to quickly see, after placing a point or entering an address, they see this automatic trace of the most direct route to the nearest valid network point following the road center lines. So we'll talk about all of this in the demo. So here we are. I'm going to pause my screen really quickly and jump over. So the first place that I want to start out today is logging into our network engineer login. So I've created this login to represent the network engineer that has full edit capabilities in this instance. And I have also enabled admin capabilities for this user as well, so they can do the user control. So here we have a fictional network that we've created in Hollis, Maine. We have certain zones that we've brought in that reflect different statuses, that reflect the status of the phases of this build. So in this region here, this is as built, versus this region here is currently under construction. And then we have some plan zones, and this integrates into Z-Manager, which I was mentioning before. We won't get into that in any detail today, but this network that we've been working on here, we're able to see that we're working on different extensions, and this is the design, and this is where we get into the nitty-gritty detail of the fiber splicing with the network engineer. So building off of this, we now want to bridge the gap between our marketing and sales team and what we've created in this engineering capacity. So if I open the administration menu, I can jump into user management, and I have a sales user that I've created here. So I'll open these permissions. And so the first thing we see is we have enabled view all projects and plans for this user. And then I've enabled editing for this user. So this is more of like a sales engineer. They will have the capability of engineering and altering some of the zones and features and attributes that are saved in this one plan. But for all others, it will be view only. And then if we jump into the site features, we've enabled the ability to get area statistics, but everything else is not necessary for this user at this juncture. So we'll save. Got it. So now I'm going to spend the rest of the demo looking at just the sales user alone. I just wanted to highlight how we would configure that user and how easy it is to do so. So I've jumped over and now I'm logging in with the sales user here. So one of the first things that we want to do with this user, we'll note that we are logged in with read-only mode right now. We don't have global editing mode enabled just yet. We're looking at this network here in Hollis. So we want to acquaint ourselves with some of the layers that we have loaded that we will be crunching, some of the data that we'll be crunching for the analysis with Polygons calculations. So we'll start with the CostQuest data. So we'll look at this example of the census blocks. So if we grab any one of these census blocks here in this area, and I'm going to zoom in a little bit here, we see some of that information that I was talking about, the demographic, infrastructure data, estimates of structures. We have average household income, average household size, the primary cable provider in the region, and so on. So that's just a quick kind of sample of what we see in this data set. And then the other data sets that we have loaded as well, we have premise points and business locations added here. So if I zoom in a little bit, I can grab some examples of some of these. So let's take a look at this point here. We have 2 business locations stacked here. And so we see some of the attributes of this business location, the name, the address, the group, class, subclass, employees, when the data was collected, and the sales revenue for that year. We also have premise points that contain information about the specific premise. So just kind of a quick primer on what this data set looks like, just in terms of bringing it in as a layer in VETRO. So up to this point, we've been working with this read-only user, and this shows what a read-only sales or marketing user could really do. One of the things that we've also enabled for the read-only user is the ability to set styling. So if we enable the zones, they're all this blue color. So if I right-click on the zone, I can alter that color, but I can also set categorized styling for this layer. So based on certain attributes, like the status, for example, within the zone, the color of that zone now reflects the status, built versus planned versus potential versus construction, and so on. So this is all read-only. Now we've created this hybrid user that has editing capabilities, so we'll take a look at what that looks like, but later on when we're doing the analysis with polygons, all of that is also available to a read-only user as well, just not the ability to edit features that are saved in plans. So with that, I will switch this over to editing mode, and when we do, we see our toolbar appear here. So the first thing that we'll do is enable editing for the Z Manager plan, which contains these polygons. So this user now has the capability to jump in and make any adjustments to the polygon. If you double click on a vertex, it snaps. We can make fine-tune adjustments, make this zone smaller or bigger as needed to reflect maybe incoming leads or to reflect projections for planned builds. So I can save that like so. And now I'm going to jump over to Portland, Maine, and create a polygon using the analysis of polygons tool. So this is ways that we can draw a polygon. So bear in mind that I still have editing enabled for this plan. So when I draw this polygon, it will be saved in this plan directly. So we'll click once to originate the polygon, and then anywhere I click, it establishes one of the corners, and then click again to finalize. And so now I can save this polygon, and we have the option to save it to any layer category. We could create new layer categories. You can type to create a new layer name, but for now I'm going to just save it into the zones and save. And then just to kind of make this distinction really clear about global versus plans, I'm going to disable editing and now draw in another polygon and go ahead and save. And we'll save that to the customers layer. and save it to zones as well without assigning to a project or plan and save. And so now if I jump into my projects and plans list, we see if I disable my Z Manager plan, that zone is associated with that plan and it disappears. If I disable all other plans, we still see this zone because it has been saved in the global layer. So just an important distinction to make there. This is available to all users. So for now, I want to just get rid of that layer. And so now we'll head back over to Hollis again. I'm jumping back and forth. So Portland, Maine is where we're broadcasting from today. Our main VETRO FiberMap office here in the center of Portland. And just west of here is Hollis, Maine. So I'm going to enable these plans again and bring these zones back in just to create a good visual for what we're working with. Okay, so the other tool that you can use to draw your polygons is this Lasso Tool. So using the Lasso Tool, I can draw a freeform shape around, say, this area that is roughly Hollis, and we immediately see an output on these calculations. So jumping into what all of this looks like, we can open this gear menu, and here we have the calculation is cost per road length, and that's currently set at $25,000. And we have an estimate of $800 as a cost to connect. And then these are the average revenue per residence and revenue per business guesses. And then we have a take rate of 75%. So we could easily come in here and play with that take rate, say drop it down to 55. And then when we submit, we see these values are updated. Our annual revenue, estimated cost, our payback period, projected customers, and our route length. So that route length is based on the road center lines that exist within this polygon. So now we'll expand out some of these points a little bit. These customer points are the layer that we were looking at earlier when I first loaded this instance. So here we have counts of all of the business points present, all of the premise points, and in more of an urban area, we see a lot more of these MDUs, but all of these are single family. And then we also can see network points and fiber cables, counts of each of those that we've drawn in VETRO. And then lastly, we see the CapEx, OpEx aggregate of polygons that we have intersected within this lasso here. So again, we can't save the lasso, but it enables you to quickly crunch that data and see what's going on. So jumping back over to Portland, we'll take a look at this feature that we've drawn in here, this polygon. And using the analysis with polygons menu, I can now export data sets from this polygon. So if you're a marketing team and you're trying to generate an address list for a door hanger campaign, or if you need lists for municipal planning meetings, we can generate the residential addresses. We can grab business addresses. We can also export other data sets that exist here, like leads from demand aggregation or neighborhood reports. But for now, we'll just take a quick look at some of these. So we've quickly output here utility poles. And so these are all of the utility poles that occur in that polygon. And then we also have business addresses. So all of those attributes that we saw in that one example are now shown here across all business points that intersect with that polygon. So some really useful information and a quick and easy way to output that information. So the next thing that we want to look at is this layer summary data down here. We expand this by clicking here. And so bear in mind that this will be affected by the layers that we have enabled. So if I disable this zone containing layer, we don't see anything here. Likewise, zone needs to be enabled in the layer list. So we have that enabled, we have this enabled. And so now we have a summary of all of our zones that are now visible to this user. So if I click on any one of these, it will quickly jump over to that zone and display it on the map. And so we can see the business points and premise points that are occurring for all of these zones. We can see the occurrence of network points, like our service locations, our central office, FATs, multiports. And then we can also see for fiber cables, total lengths of the different cable types contained within that polygon. So this was a really important feature that, a very cool feature that a lot of our users asked for, was the ability to quickly assemble a polygon around an area or a plan and get total length outputs here. So the last tool that we're going to look at here in the demo is this quick plan tool. So jumping back into analysis with polygons, this is the tool right here. And so this makes it very easy for a network planning team, whether it is your network engineering team or your sales and marketing team or a hybrid of the two. They can easily drop a point, or they can enter an address. So we'll say in the town of Buxton here, right at the corner of 22 and Rankin Road, we'll drop that pin. And so this will automatically trace the most direct route to the nearest valid network point following the road center lines. This trace can be adjusted if needed, if you have different intentions for the way that the route should go. And then what we see here is, if we zoom in a little bit, we have this line, and then we have a buffer that has been established around the line. So that buffer is a polygon, and the intersection of that polygon with these relevant data points is what we're seeing displayed here. And then again, we can adjust these settings on the fly. And then we can also save this route here as a cable, or we can save the buffer as a zone or polygon, or we can save both of them together. So when you select route, for example, you indicate the project and plan, and you can save it as any cable type that you wish. So that concludes the demo segment. We're going to jump back over to the slides here. And I'll open this window right here and resume. All right. So some helpful hints and reminders to kind of recap that a layer needs to be enabled in the layer list for it to appear as an option in the layer summary data panel. And the same is true for plans. So that's a thing to keep in mind if you're not seeing the data that you expect. We recommend using the categorical styling to visually differentiate the zones with the different attributes. We know that marketing teams are typically very visual, tends to be their strength. And so this differentiation between the different zones, I think, makes life much easier. And then bear in mind that a polygon needs to be saved before you can export data from the polygon, like the one that I saved in Portland, versus when you make it on the fly using the Lasso Tool. And then another point to reiterate is the business points, premise points, and the cost quest data. So the customer points category that we looked at, that has the business points and it has the premise points. And there's some considerations there where that data comes from and how we load it. And then also the CapEx and OpEx data that derives from the cost quest census block data. So if you're interested in getting this data loaded into your instance, please reach out. Please get in touch with our sales team, or if you happen to be talking to the support team and you mention that you want to get in touch, we can certainly connect the dots for you, but just let us know, reach out, and we're happy to make this happen for you. And then this ongoing question that we have, we always want to know, especially with the feature set that we looked at today, are there any additional features, data sets, or reports that you would find useful when you're using VETRO FiberMap to plan, sell, and design your fiber network? So please feel free to pass along any ideas via the Zoom webinar chat before we close out in a couple of minutes here. But beyond that, feature requests are always welcome, and they can be submitted at any time to support@vetrofibermap.com. Just a quick announcement about our next user enablement session. It'll likely be focused on ZManager, and we have it slated for the 17th of June, so we'll be sending invites out for that. We intend to talk about upcoming feature releases and more, so be on the lookout for those invites. So that concludes all of the regularly scheduled content for today. Just a reminder to contact the tech support team Monday through Friday, 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. Eastern time via email or phone if you have questions about anything. So for general information, including sales inquiries, contact our sales team. And from everyone here at VETRO FiberMap, thank you for joining. We look forward to hearing from you and continuing to work together to make VETRO FiberMap the best fiber design and management tool available. Thank you.